What's the most horrific nightmare you've ever had? Now imagine having that same dream over and over and over again for years, like I did. For me, it was being hunted and caught and inevitably devoured by big groups of zombies and skeletons. I actually ended up developing a crippling, bone-deep terror of zombies and skeletons, to the point where I couldn't even look at those little plastic Halloween decorations without getting the willies. Halloween really sucked for me. And right about now, you're probably wondering about the 6-foot anatomically correct skeleton that I'm sitting with. Well, this is Calcifer, and as you can see, we're cool. How? I'm going to share the 3 most effective ways to handle nightmares using lucid dreaming. But let's rewind. The first time I did this was actually an accident. I think I was only about 7 months into my lucid dreaming training, so this is probably 7 years ago. And you know, like most beginning lucid dreamers, I kind of avoided anything scary. I opted for fun and flying and magic. So whenever I found myself in one of those recurring nightmares, what I would do was use the dream transformation technique I'm going to teach you, number 3 of this video. I'd use that technique to exit the dream. But one night, it didn't work. I got lucid in one of those recurring nightmares. It was a nightmare with like 200 skeletons chasing me in that kind of horror movie style. And I tried to use the technique and it didn't work. And I tried again and it didn't work. And I tried again and it still didn't work. And I remember thinking like, okay, the dream does not want me to run anymore. It's time to face this. So I took a big dream breath and I mustered all my courage and I turned around to face this horde of skeletons. And I remember thinking like, what should I do? And so I just took the skeleton that was closest, and without thinking too much, I simply kissed him on the forehead. And then in that moment, all the skeletons suddenly burst out laughing. These skeletons have been chasing me my whole life, just cracking up like it was the greatest joke of all time. And after that, I never had that nightmare of being chased by hordes of the living dead ever again. Somehow, by facing and embracing it, I had freed myself from it. Now, I have since learned that you do not have to literally kiss your monsters to heal your dreams. I'm going to teach you some powerful techniques with varying degrees of intensity and proximity of how to do this, plus an advanced technique for those of you who are extra brave. But first, I want you to consider this. Why did that work after years of being hounded by this nightmare? Why did a little kiss on the forehead change everything? To understand that, we need to explore what nightmares even are. So I'm going to quickly take you through the 3 big theories for why we have nightmares, what's the point of them, and if we know this, then we can certainly figure out what to do with them. The first theory is the idea that nightmares are an evolutionary tool. They are designed to allow us to rehearse dangerous or worrying situations so that we can be more prepared in waking life. The idea being that, you know, if you have a nightmare about a tiger and in the dream you're figuring out how to hide from the tiger, if you see a tiger in real life, you might be more prepared to escape it. And there's actually some interesting studies about this. They looked at medical students who were sitting exams, and they did find that the medical students who had nightmares about the exam before the exam tended to do better. It's interesting. I'm sure you've had the experience where, you know, maybe you've had a dream that reminded you about something you needed to do, or you started worrying about something that was important happening in your life. So just this idea that, you know, a nightmare essentially is giving us an opportunity to practice and prepare for things that are challenging in waking life. The second theory is the idea that a nightmare is actually a sign of a healing mind. Dr. Rosalind Cartwright at Rush University in Chicago, she was studying the effect of depression and trauma. Her research interestingly showed that only her patients who were actively dreaming about the painful experiences at the time that it was happening, only those patients ended up becoming free clinically of their depression. Those patients who were dreaming, but not dreaming specifically about the painful experiences, showed no improvement. It seems that healing was predicated on dreaming about the emotional themes and the sentiments of the waking state trauma. And a study in 2011 using EEGs and MRIs, they actually showed that, you know, REM dreaming sleep had an impact on the nervous system. It led to measurable decreases in the emotional intensity around, you know, previously experienced trauma. Both of those studies point to the fact that nightmares might not only just be good for us, but perhaps they are a prerequisite for healing. And lastly, the third theory on nightmares is what my lucid dreaming teacher Charlie Morley calls a nightmare is a dream that is shouting. And the idea being that, you know, a nightmare isn't just random, that there are experiences or aspects of ourselves that want to be heard, that want attention, And the way it's getting your attention is by creating this nightmare. And it's interesting, I've definitely noticed this too, which is that if someone's not dealing with something in their waking life, if they're putting it off, if they're afraid to talk about it, if they've repressed it, it will always end up coming up in their dreams. So if we see this, if we see a nightmare, like a part of ourselves that's putting its hand up going, hey, can I have some love and attention? It makes sense that just giving it some attention will help to close that loop. I certainly found that. Sometimes just being like, okay, cool, got it, I see you, I'm listening, that's enough. As Krishnamurti says, the seeing is the doing. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of it. We're going to start with the easiest and then work our way up to the most advanced techniques. Number one is the escape spin, aka get me the f out of here. Super simple. If you find yourself in a dream situation you don't like, close your eyes and spin. And what you're going to do is, as you're spinning with your eyes closed, you're going to imagine where you want to go next, try to think of somewhere positive, and then as you open your eyes again, anticipate that you're going to be there. It's kind of like hitting an eject button. Some people say, summon a door, walk through the door. What I found is that if you're in a nightmare and you're trying to get out, that can take a little bit too much concentration. Much easier to just close your eyes and spin. I recommend only doing this if you really can't face the dream. As my story shows, whatever you resist persists. But this is a good technique to have in your back pocket for whenever you need it. Number two technique is confronting the dream. Now this is exactly what it sounds like, which is fighting back. Now again, this isn't my favorite because I do believe that everything in the dream is you. So fighting an aspect of yourself is kind of like hitting yourself. But there are some circumstances where, this is the right thing in the moment. What I would recommend is, rather than just fighting with force, which shows that you aren't really that lucid, you're kind of lacking a bit of awareness, is to try a couple of these techniques first. So number one, stop time. If you're overwhelmed by a dream but you want to face it but you're not ready, just say stop and the whole dream will stop. And this will give you a moment to breathe and reflect and make a decision about how you want to move forward. Or another way is to summon a dream champion. So rather than you going head to head with your own nightmare, is actually summon something that is like symbolically representative for you. So it could be Gandalf, or for me, like maybe I could have summoned a giant ball of light and evaporated the skeletons in that light. You're in a dream, so you can use magic, you can have a special weapon or a special shield. And these techniques are really great for kids, by the way. And if they're great for kids, you know what that means? They're excellent for adults. During the daytime, you can sort of come up with a plan of what you would call up, what you would summon, even draw it out. So that way, when you're confronted with a nightmare, you know exactly what you want to do. But again, everything in the dream is you. So only run away or fight if you don't feel prepared enough to do this next technique, which is number three, face, embrace, and integrate. Here, you're going to choose to actually listen to and engage with the nightmare. I'm going to teach you this on multiple levels. So again, starting with the easiest, working up to the most advanced. Number one, you can simply witness the dream. When you get lucid, maybe fly up out of harm's way. Put yourself somewhere where you feel safe. You can turn off your pain sensors. Not sure if you've tried that, but do what you need to keep yourself feeling safe while staying in that particular nightmare. And then witness and acknowledge the dream. Even say, I hear you, I see you, I acknowledge you. Anything to let the dream know that you are witnessing it, you are engaging lucidly. Even doing that from afar can make a big difference. Number two, this is the one I do most often and I would recommend you do if you feel like you have the capacity, which is to embrace the nightmare. If it's a physical monster, hug it. If it's just a nightmare situation, send all your love to it. I personally use the Ho'oponopono prayer, which is, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. And so I grab and I hug and I embrace and I send love to like whatever it is that's in my space. And when you do that, watch what happens. It always creates some kind of incredible transformation. And then you can engage with your nightmare, with those dream figures, and ask them, what do you represent? Where does this come from? How can I heal this? And you can actually have a dialogue with whatever part of yourself has been dying to be heard. And then there's the advanced version. Only do this if you feel confident and if you've got some practice. It took me about 2 years before I was able to do this consistently. And in this case, you get lucid and you don't change anything. What I would do is allow the dream and the nightmare figures, whatever it was, to do whatever it was they wanted to do. So I've had dreams where, I've got stabbed through the hands, or when a skeleton literally chewed my hand off, and I don't turn my pain receptors off. I do this kind of hardcore mode, And you might be asking me why, and the reason is this is a type of mental discipline training. When you do this advanced practice, you are giving yourself an incredible opportunity to reaffirm, I see through the illusion of the dream. I see that these sensations are just in my own mind. So it's this practice of like seeing the true nature of the reality and really having the mental discipline to face and embrace without fear. And inevitably, again, simply being there and being present, even without trying to change it, the nightmare always transforms. Nightmares can be sucky, but ultimately they are profound opportunities for growth and for insight, especially when you apply lucid dreaming to it. If you want to learn lucid dreaming, make sure you first don't make these 3 rookie mistakes. Watch my video, I'm going to map them out for you and make sure you don't waste your time and effort in the way that most beginning lucid dreamers do.